Welcome back to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Russia in the past 24 hours. Russia's economy is still moving, but it is moving on a narrower road. The latest forecast from the country's largest bank expects growth of only about 0.4% this year. Government spending is adding roughly 2 percentage points to the economy, which tells us the state is doing most of the heavy lifting. The central bank may be able to cut its key rate from 14% to 13.5% by the end of the year, and inflation is slowing. That is real resilience. It is not the same thing as broad, healthy growth. The Kremlin can sustain this arrangement longer than the regular predictions of imminent collapse suggest. Russia still has reserves, industrial capacity, energy revenue, and a government willing to direct money toward the war. The weakness is cumulative. Every refinery repair, emergency import, subsidized loan, security deployment, and logistics detour consumes resources that could have gone somewhere else. The key question is not whether the economy suddenly stops. It is how much civilian investment and household confidence the state gives up to keep everything else functioning. Fuel is where this trade-off becomes visible. Ukrainian attacks have damaged refineries and reduced domestic processing. Some regions have seen purchase limits, station closures, and missing grades of gasoline. Moscow has responded by importing refined fuel from India, Turkey, and Belarus, and by arranging processing in Kazakhstan. That creates an awkward picture for one of the world's biggest oil producers. Russia can export crude, but it needs help turning enough of it into the products people and businesses use every day. This does not mean Russia is about to run dry. It means the system is getting more expensive. Tankers have to be found. Insurance and shipping arrangements have to be managed. Fuel must reach regions spread across 11 time zones. Export restrictions can protect domestic supply, but they also reduce revenue and disrupt buyers. Turkey is already replacing more Russian diesel with cargoes from the United States and India. Once customers build new supply chains, some of that business may not come back quickly. The Baltic Sea is becoming another expensive security zone. Germany says the 8 NATO countries around the Baltic plan to create a joint drone defense task force. The goal is rapid information exchange and a faster response to unmanned aircraft and other hybrid threats. That may sound technical, but it addresses a basic problem. A drone near an airport, cable landing point, pipeline, or military site could be criminal, commercial, accidental, or part of an intelligence operation. Governments often have minutes to respond and days or weeks to attribute responsibility. A useful task force needs more than meetings. It needs shared sensors, compatible communications, legal authority to intercept aircraft, and rules for what happens when attribution is uncertain. The region has already dealt with damaged cables, pipeline concerns, suspected sabotage, and unexplained activity near strategic sites. Drone defense is shifting from a military specialty into an internal security mission. That brings police, aviation regulators, intelligence services, and armed forces into the same decision chain. Russia is facing its own internal security burden. A serviceman was killed and his wife wounded when their car exploded in the Pushkinsky district outside St. Petersburg. Officials have not publicly named the victim, released his rank, identified a suspect, or blamed a specific organization. Local reports describe him as an Air Force lieutenant colonel, but that detail remains outside the formal account. The uncertainty matters. Russia has suffered assassinations and attempted attacks against military officers, defense industry figures, and prominent supporters of the war. Moscow has blamed Ukraine for some of them, and Ukraine has acknowledged selected operations while denying others. That history makes a Ukrainian link plausible, but it does not make every bombing solved on arrival. The most likely immediate effect is tighter surveillance, more force protection, and a broader counterintelligence campaign. The evidence should determine attribution, not the pattern alone. On the battlefield, Russia launched a second consecutive night of large drone and missile attacks against Ukraine. One person was reported killed, and homes, apartment buildings, warehouses, rail operations, retail sites, and package sorting centers were damaged. Ukraine reported widespread interceptions. Russia described military and industrial targets. The strategic test sits underneath the platform count. Can repeated damage interrupt power, freight, repairs, and production for long enough to change Ukraine's capacity? Or does the country keep restoring the system faster than Russia can break it? Ukraine is also sending large numbers of drones into Russia. Russian authorities claimed more than 500 were intercepted overnight and reported casualties and property damage in several regions. That total cannot be independently confirmed in full, but the scale fits Kyiv's effort to disperse Russian defenses and reach fuel, industrial, and transport sites. The result is a much wider air defense contest. Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, and the Baltic states are all spending more time tracking objects that cross borders or appear near critical infrastructure. Moscow is trying to describe this expanding contest without admitting that it is escalating. The Kremlin says attacks on Russian economic and trade infrastructure will be answered, but it also says Russia does not need a dramatic military escalation because its forces are advancing. That language gives the government flexibility. Any retaliation can be presented as normal continuity rather than a new threshold. Battlefield progress becomes the reason officials can sound measured. Independent assessments remain more cautious about the speed and scale of those advances. That gap is part of the story. Russian audiences are hearing that the armed forces retain the initiative, the home front is defended, and the state can absorb sanctions and attacks. Reports about rising international reserves and new fighter deliveries reinforce the image of a government with money and industrial output. Civilian damage in Ukraine receives far less attention than Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory. The bottom line is that Russia still has substantial capacity, but it is being asked to do more things at once. It must finance the war, repair energy infrastructure, import fuel, protect officers, defend a huge territory, and support household stability. None of those pressures alone is decisive. Together, they shape the long contest over endurance. Watch fuel restrictions, refinery runs, regional budgets, and domestic security measures. Those indicators will tell us more about Russia's staying power than another dramatic prediction that the whole system is about to collapse. Thanks for listening. Keep your maps open, your sources skeptical, and your notifications on. For the written brief, find us at restrictedhandling.substack.com. See you tomorrow.